Hello, and welcome to Dr. Gakman's Nintendo Power Checklist. This is for the year 2003. In this year, you will see on the covers, they put this edge stuff where it's like they have other titles besides the cover title. The cover title here is The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, but as you can see, there's other, I'm not going to go over each one of those on every volume, but this is volume 164, which is January of 2003. And before you even get to the centerfold, there is a tear out little envelope that has Smashing Live orchestra music from Super Smash Bros. Melee. And this is a special bonus, subscriber bonus, for Nintendo Power subscribers for January 2003. And it includes this CD, which I have in a case because my cover got all ripped up. The perforation on this is pretty bad. I make notes of this kind of stuff on my blogger as I go through the text checklist. But on the back, it has a track list. It also has a track list on the actual disc itself. It is the Tokyo Philharmonic Orchestra, I believe, performing all of these songs, and they all go into each other, and it's great. Like, you don't think that they would go into each other, but they do because of how well it's orchestrated and everything. So you should check this out. I believe it's up on YouTube, but I'm also we've also got copies of that at the store that I work at, official and unofficial. The centerfold in this volume, January, volume 164, Nintendo Power Magazine, there is Skies of Arcadia Legends, the centerfold poster there. The centerfolds, like in the previous year and maybe the year before that, are perforated. So the perforation, though, because as you can see here, it ripped up a little bit harder to get stuff out. So, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's good in the sense that, like, it stays in there if you want to keep it in there for that pristine, like, virgin, untouched thing. But if you actually want to get it out, and for the purposes of me making these videos, I take everything out so that you can see what they look like. They were pretty rough to get out this year. On the back of that, and on the back of most of these centerfold posters, is going to be like an overview. Occasionally there'll be character profiles and interviews on some of the back of these centerfolds and posters, but this is just an overview of it, of the game. The same game as what's on the front of the centerfold. So, and then we got comics again, but they only did it for, I believe, 3 volumes. And they were not as long and not as big as the last, as the Super Metroid comic. There was no Metroid in the Nintendo 64 era. So we go from Super Nintendo, Super Metroid, they had a comic, to Metroid Prime on GameCube, and it has a comic that was done by Dark Horse Comics and Dreamwave. Now, I don't have these, if they made any separate comics. Very well drawn. This is an interview before the comic actually takes place, and then this is, I think it says meanwhile, blurry picture, sorry, my camera's not so great on my phone. It goes into the actual comic, which, like I said, the artwork is really good on this. And then in the back of the volume, there is a perforated poster. It's only, it's 2-sided, this one is, but some of the other posters, when they're these big giant fold out ones, there's only, one side. We'll go into that later as we go through the volumes here. But this is a calendar for the year 2003, which has a big winter mural at the top there. And then on the back of that, it has the later 6 months from July to December, the front being from January to June, of course, and it has more of a springtime mural at the top there. So pretty cool. Next volume, this is for February, and as you can see, there's the side action, the edge extra stuff, but the actual cover is for The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Now, around this time in Nintendo history, which I am going to have eventually someday a long descriptive through the generations of Nintendo Power Magazine on my blogger, or not Nintendo Power Magazine, but Nintendo in general, the generations. You know, Wind Waker was one of those what kind of things when you know, you first get reactions to it or whatever, but you know, it's a fan favorite for some, and the art style is liked by some, but you know, others were kind of disappointed by it. That's beside the point. I'm kind of getting off topic there, but this is already, we're at February 2003. This is volume 165. The titling in the Nintendo Power Magazine, sometimes they change the colors of them. This almost looks like it's gold foil, but it's not. There are some foil. I say foil, but it's basically just shiny, shiny font or text on the covers. So of some of the volumes. So there's that. And in here, before you get to the centerfold, there is a set of stickers for Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion, which launched together and went hand in hand with each other. Other Nintendo GameCube, Nintendo, and Nintendo Power Magazine related stickers, stuff for Wind Waker, Metroid, Mario. And then there's these little GameCube memory card labels, so that's kind of cool. They were more or less like waterproof type stickers, so this year was very sticker heavy in the magazine, so you'll see that as we go through. The centerfold for this, again perforated, is Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc, sorry. And on the back is also, again, an overview for same game, Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc. And then there's the part 2 of the Metroid Prime comic from Dark Horse and Dreamwave. March 2003, volume 166. You got your side stuff over here, but the cover is The Sims. That was crazy. EA actually, to me, was a little bit more valid back then. that's for sure. I never really liked them, but you gotta like Will Wright. You gotta like SimCity, Sims, and you know, the Sims franchise overall. And then you got Def Jam up here, and then you have the EA Sports big stuff like SSX, and you know, the NFL and NHL and NBA Street games. Anyways, here's that Def Jam again, and that's EA big as the centerfold. On the back of the centerfold is an overview with some character profiles for, or at least some character pictures for Def Jam Vendetta. And we have part 3, which I believe is the end of the comic as it was featured in Nintendo Power Magazine. Again, I don't know if they made a separate comic that was like an actual comic. I need to look into that, because I am a big Metroid fan, and I think that this would actually be pretty cool to collect for Metroid stuff, for Nintendo stuff, and for people who are collecting Nintendo Power stuff, even though I doubt it has any Nintendo Power markings, if there are comics. So, you know, like separate, like actual comics. Anyways, we're on to volume 167, which is April 2003, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire versions as the cover, but also We have some side stuff here. It's a very kind of like Japanesey and or even Western other magazines like EGM, GamePro. They had a cover, but there was a lot of times, like well over half their volumes, that had tons of other, like little screenshots of other games and, blah blah blah. Nintendo Power has done a little bit of that in the past, but this particular year there is a lot of that. There's a main cover, but then there's the edge, which has a bunch of extra stuff. The Hobbit is the centerfold poster. On the back of that is an overview of the Hobbit game. And in the back of the volume, now this is white on the back, but on the front it is Ruby and Sapphire versions of Pokemon, which were the ones that were on Game Boy Advance. And it's showing you, it's got them numbered. It's not a Pokédex lineup, though, at all. But it's got them numbered, and it basically has the Pokemon that are in the game, which includes many of the Pokemon from previous games, too. Yada, yada, yada. I think I owned Sapphire at one point, but I never really had much time back then, or even still today, to play the games. Of course, I play Pokemon Go all the time, but that's a different kind of beast. So I don't know exactly why it's not like a Pokédex here, but these Pokemon are kind of numbered strangely on here. So blah blah blah. This is kind of like just a list of Pokemon that are in the game. So Golden Sun, the Lost Stage, which I believe is the second Golden Sun, or maybe it's the first one. I can't remember. I've already lost track. That's pitiful of me to do that. But that's the cover, and as you can see, side stuff. The centerfold, and that's the cover for, I should say, Volume 168, which is May of 2003. And the centerfold is Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, which is an Igarashi Castlevania. I believe it was on Game Boy Advance. I believe it was Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, and Aria of Sorrow. They started to give them the titles. They started to give them something about music, like Harmony and Aria, and then I think later on there was one on DS that kind of had a music-related title. Regardless, there it is. There's the centerfold, and on the back there is there's an overview, and there's also a timeline for Castlevania games going along the bottom. Usually when Nintendo Power Magazine did these timelines, they only included the ones that were on Nintendo platforms, but sometimes, rarely, they would include timelines, or at least some kind of mention of ones when they were on, non-Nintendo platforms, especially if they started off like on Dreamcast first, or on PlayStation first, or something like that. They had to mention, oh yeah, this is Sonic, and it was on Genesis first, or that kind of thing. But for the most part, whenever they did these like special timelines for centerfolds or posters or whatever, they were Nintendo ones. So on to the next volume. This has silver foil at the top. You can see here it says E3 ... but it also says Link battles only on GCN, which was their abbreviation for GameCube Nintendo. Some people would go NGC, but that would be Neo Geo Color, or if you're not careful. So to avoid that kind of thing, it's kind of like why Nintendo didn't name the Ultra 64 because of Ultra Games, which really I don't think that would have confused people or whatever, but Nintendo's kind of picky about that kind of stuff, so they call it a GCN. But anyways, here's Link. He was in Soul Calibur 2. That was a big deal. The rumor at the time was that it was only going to be on GameCube, but what Namco ended up doing was bringing it out on all three, and I believe one of the guys... Oh, no, I remember now. It was Yoda oh no, wait a minute. No, that's Soul Calibur 3. Spawn was in Soul Calibur 2 on Xbox. Link from Zelda was in Soul Calibur 2 on GameCube. And I want to say that Soul Calibur 2 on PlayStation had one of the guys from Tekken in it or whatever. Anyways, it's kind of like there's a PlayStation staple. I don't know why Spawn would be a Xbox staple. I mean, there was, I believe, Spawn games on other platforms before and after Xbox, but whatever. Later on, they did Soul Calibur 3, and stupidly, they did not make it for GameCube, even though that was the best-selling one. And not just because Link was in it, but because a lot of Dreamcast games did better, or Dreamcast Origin games did better on GameCube, blah, blah, blah. But that's, again, that'll be something that I write about in the future on my blogger. But it was a no-brainer. They should have had something on GameCube or a Nintendo platform at the time, but they didn't for Soul Calibur 3, and they made the big deal of, Yoda is in Soul Calibur 3 on Xbox, but on PlayStation it's Darth Vader, oh, he's so cool, that kind of crap. But anyways, blah, blah, blah. Soul Calibur is a cool game, but I got into it on Dreamcast, but I didn't really follow it after Soul Calibur 2 because I thought that it was kind of shitty treatment that they didn't give us 3. But I'm a Nintendo-only guy, mainly. Well, I should say I'm a Nintendo-only guy. I have other platforms personally, but I prefer to get only the Nintendo ones. But blah, blah, blah. And then this cover opens up, and that silver foil that I was talking about, ... goes to Showstoppers. And then on the inside of that cover, it says, and much more. This was basically E3 coverage, I believe, or pre-E3 stuff, because it was June of that year, and usually June is when E3 would happen. And the centerfold there was Mega Man Network Transmission. This would be like a part of the Battle Network series of Mega Man games. And on the back of that is an overview of the Mega Man Network Transmission game. Hello, I am now redoing this part of the video because I'm going to have to re-upload this and everything, but that's not your concern. This is F-Zero GX for volume 170. I had previously recorded the rest of this year of 2003, not realizing that this was a double month issue. This is volume 170, which ended up being July and August of 2003. It was not on my radar. It was not in my head to think, oh, this is a combined issue, but it was. It's July and August 2003. That is a editor's note that I want to make into my blog, and then I'm gonna editing the video and re-uploading it to YouTube and blah blah blah. But for the year 2003, this is F-Zero GX. For those who don't know, there was an AX version, which was an arcade version of F-Zero. And it was on the Triforce GameCube based arcade board. They called it Triforce because it was, I believe, Sega, Namco, and Nintendo. The Triforce or whatever. They should have had Capcom in there too, but it was, often they would make arcade boards that were very close to certain consoles so that it was easier to port those games over. Basically, GX and AX were very similar games, and they were both developed by, I want to say, Sega AM2, or is it AM1? I can't keep track of all the Sega teams, but regardless, it was really good. It was from their racing game team, because they made a lot of racing games. And yeah, so that's the cover for Volume 170, July and August of 2003. The centerfold here is Dragon Ball Z, The Legacy of Goku 2, which on the back there, it's a centerfold overview of the game. And there's an ad card, which is not a full page, poster, and it's like thicker paper. And I think it opened up, and it had some kind of message on the inside or something. It was goofy. Freaky Flyer ad cards. There you go. I have it pluralized on my blogger, but now that I'm thinking back of this, because I recorded this last month and then I'm having to re-record it now just to correct the July-August volume 170 mistake, but that's not your concern. The next thing here is Pokemon Groudon and Kyogre e-cards. Now, I personally have these, but I have them in a binder. I've got them separated from here because they glued these things on with like this stuff that if you leave it in there for too long, then it'll get like oily or greasy or whatever. But anyways, there's that. Now we're on to the next volume, which is September 2003, volume 171, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance on the cover. This was a big deal around this time because Square, which around this time was also becoming Square Enix, because they merged with Enix, their RPG rivals. And this, it was like a mark of them not leaving, or they left during the Nintendo 64 era, and then this was a mark of them returning with the Game Boy Advance, of course, and GameCube era, although it was more about the Game Boy Advance for Square Enix, I'm sure. This is a Gladius poster. There was other centerfolds and posters out there in other magazines, but this was the one that Nintendo Power got. It was vertical, whereas some other ones were just the long sword and it was horizontal. And then here is an overview of the game on the back of the centerfold poster. Alrighty, we're on to the next volume, which is volume 172 of October 2003. Beautiful Joe, a part of the Capcom 5. I can't remember if I had already talked about this before, but Capcom 5 ended up being games that they would release on other platforms or blah, blah, blah. So I think it was Resident Evil 4, Beautiful Joe, Piano 3, Killer 7, and then there was Dead Phoenix, which never got released. We'll talk about the Capcom 5. I think I mentioned it previously in this video that, and if I haven't, I'm mentioning it now because I don't know, I'm editing the video as I go, as is kind of like an in-camera edit. But the Capcom 5 was a part of the GameCube legacy, which, I'll go into when I write stuff about it on my blog. I'm making a generations page where I talk about Nintendo consoles and portables throughout the different generations, and industry stuff and games and hardware and just code names for the or not just the names, but the projects that would end up becoming other consoles later on, and yada yada yada. But this is Beautiful Joe on the cover. There is also silver foil on the text up here. So there's Star Wars Rebel Rouser, The Simpsons Hit and Run, Piano 3, Boktai, The Sun Is in Your Hand. That was silver foil. So just wanted to point that out. Speaking of Star Wars, this is Rebel Strike Rogue Squadron 3 centerfold. And on the back of that, there is an overview of that game. And then it also makes the cover of the next volume, which is 173, November 2003, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 3, Rebel Strike. It says, notice here too, and this is something for collectors, free Eon ticket. This ticket, which is actually an e-card, is worth a lot of money to collectors, Pokemon trading card game. This is a vertical centerfold poster for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Nickelodeon version. And then here is the Nickelodeon version game that was on GameCube. There was also one that was released on Game Boy Advance. There's kind of a little timeline on here too of Nintendo-based Turtles games. I need to make a note of that in my blogger because that's not on there now. And then Kirby. This is episode 1. It's in the style of when they did Kirby Right Back at You comics before Nintendo Power Magazine, where they're basically taking the cartoon and then making panels out of it and making a comic book out of it. Kind of like they've done with Pokemon and with Kirby before. This is Right Back at You, but it's called Air Ride in Style. I don't know, this was a cross promotion for the GameCube Kirby's Air Ride game. A really fun game. And then here is the Eon ticket, which I have separated. There is like a card stock kind of paper page there, and then it was on there as glued on as this, which I didn't take a picture of the other side of the card, but I believe it just says Pokemon, or it says Pokemon Eon ticket like this says right here, because it wasn't really a part of the trading card game, but it was an e-card that you could use to open up something in Pokemon. I believe it was which Pokemon had Latios and Latios? Oh, right here, Ruby and Sapphire. And then here's Fire Emblem. This is such a great game, such a great series that finally came over to America. I was really hoping that they were going to do the same treatment for the Detective Club, Famicom Detective Club stuff, but they ended up making that a digital. At least they did bring it to America in some form, but I would have preferred a physical form. Maybe back then, if they would have done it, they would have definitely done it physical because, you know, digital is now bigger, blah, blah, blah. That's beside the point. Both great franchises, and Fire Emblem is awesome, and it's been a big thing for Nintendo ever since Smash, when Prince Marth was introduced to us American audiences. Mario for President as the centerfold for Mario Party 5. And on the back of that, there is character profiles and an overview of the Mario Party 5 game. And then here is episode 2 of Air Ride in Style, Kirby Right Back at You comic. Here is another centerfold later in the volume. This one is a tear-out centerfold. Yu Yu Hakusho, Spirit Detective, Ghost Files, which this is the Game Boy Advance game. And then on the back was the overview, of course. And then here is I don't know if you could call it a bumper sticker. It's a sticker for Mario Kart Double Dash. And then that was December, by the way, 2003, volume 174, the Fire Emblem cover. And right here, when you zoom in, the binding of all of those volumes makes what you would call Child Link, Kid Link, Toon Link, in the Wind Waker. So yeah, that's what the binding looks like when it's put together. And so I guess this is now the end of the video. I will have to edit this in. And thanks for watching. This was the year 2003 in Nintendo Power Magazine.